So when the news broke that the National Negro Congress was a communist organization, A. Philip Randolph, who knew this all along but wanted to save his image, publicly distanced himself from the organization.
Have we really been duped by Negro communist leaders in the United States who were just simple hand puppets for white communist Jews?
Communism is a lying, dirty, godless, murderous, determined criminal conspiracy.
In those days, most Americans still viewed communists as nefarious.
They take over organization after organization in America in just 2 steps: infiltration and agitation.
So when the news broke that the National Negro Congress was a communist organization, A. Philip Randolph, who knew this all along but wanted to save his image, publicly distanced himself from the organization. Of course, this wasn't a genuine move of an independent disdain for communism on the part of A. Philip Randolph. As the preeminent civil rights leader of his time, he seldom made any decision without the consultation or the dictates of both foreign and domestic communist strategists. That included one Stanley David Levison. He was also the mentor of a young gay communist protege named Bayard Rustin. Together they attempted the first so-called March on Washington in the 1940s. Groups like the NNC and the SNYC kept right on going. One of the leaders of the SNYC was a communist strategist by the name of Jim Jackson. In order to increase their numbers and add as many Southern black youngsters to their cause as possible, the SNYC would frequently host banquets and social gatherings across the South. They would often parade Paul Robeson at their annual conferences because of his celebrity status. They'd give speeches to anger and embitter the youngsters, and then they'd have them participate in protests. Ironically, it was covert and explicit communist agitation meant to incite violent reaction from a very small number of fringe whites who would irrationally take the bait, which re-intensified and prolonged the very conditions that communist front groups like the SNYC were protesting against. In early 1944, the organization proposed to start a new Negro Party in the South under the slogan of nonviolence and non-cooperation. Later that year, the organization held its annual conference in Atlanta, Georgia, where MLK Sr., a 31-year-old Rosa Parks, and an 18-year-old Ralph Abernathy, who had joined the movement, were in attendance. MLK Jr. was 15 years old at the time. This was the same year that President Roosevelt introduced his so-called Second Bill of Rights.
So I decided to go into Google and type in some questions just to see what they would say. And I asked a question here: was there communists connected to the National Negro Congress? And it says the National Negro Congress, NNC, founded in 1936, was heavily intertwined with the Communist Party USA, CPUSA. The CPUSA actively organized and funded the NNC, working to build an anti-racism and labor coalition. Key communist connected figures include prominent Communist Party leader James W. Ford, co-founded the NNC. Other leading communist figures included Alphaeus Hunton, who chaired the Washington, D.C. chapter and the Labor Committee, and Doxey Wilkinson, who chaired the Civic Affairs Committee. And then it says the NNC ultimately disintegrated after World War II due to anti-communist pressure during the Red Scare and changing political alliances. So then I said, let me scroll to another page here. And I asked a different question, and I said, were there white communist Jews backing the National Negro Congress? And it says, yes, many white communists and Jewish progressives were instrumental in backing and participating in the National Negro Congress, NNC. Formed in 1936, the NNC was a broad civil rights coalition that united black activists, church leaders, and labor organizers to fight against lynching, segregation, and economic inequality. Then it says, many Jewish Americans in the CPUSA identify with the struggles of African Americans due to their own historical experiences with prejudice and fascism, leading them to actively fundraise, march, and organize alongside black activists. And let me see. Then it says here, the coalition largely splintered in the late 1930s and 1940s due to shifts in international politics, such as the Nazi-Soviet pact and escalating Cold War anti-communism, which forced non-communist black leaders to step away. Now, getting together to combat against an evil, racism really is within the heart. So to steer people in the right direction against having a racist heart, yes, we should help people out of that. Fighting against, lynching and anything that's going to harm another person just because of the way they look or the way they talk, the way they like to choose certain things, the way they like to anything they like to do opposed to the way another group of people like to do. We need to speak out against that. And in some things, it does take more getting together, bringing people together and having, I would say, conversations. Can we talk this out? But there were certain things different things that I disagree with that some people don't, where protesting is a big thing. I'm not a big part of. I'm more so, let's come together, have conversations, and then do things the lawful way to see how we can change certain laws.